I was, I am, and I will remain fascinated by the story of these deities who dominated the ancient world, and if, at first, I thought they existed only in the mythology of the Sumerians, the coincidence made to discover them thousands of kilometers away in Central America, in what we call today the state of Ecuador, but also in Mexico. But who are these creatures that arrived on Earth from the planet Nubir, Nibiru? The description of them and their role in history is often contradictory. Studying the ancient Sumerian texts, we discover that they are the descendants of Annu, god of heaven. We find them in Inanna's descendant into the netherworld, where these Anunaki are portrayed as the 7 supreme judges. In later religious texts, such as the Epic of Gilgamesh, they appear in a similar position. In the old Babylonian period, they are the underworld gods, while the heaven god, Igigi, the deities considered the Anunnaki to be an old generation of gods that had been removed and banded. On an Akkadian cylinder dated 2300 BC, we find Iana, Utu, and Enki missing An, Nihursag, Nana, and Enil. These are actually the 7 Anunnaki who will change the world. Some considered, rightly or wrongly, and talked about Enkidu, a genetic experiment that produced the human species. And now begins a fantastic story that certainly has nothing to do with reality. They are trying to genetically create a group of workers to meet their requirements. The Neanderthal man, who apparently was not suitable, was genetically modified into the modern man. And finally, the Neanderthal was genetically eliminated. In the Jewish texts, we find Adam, the first man. Strangely, in the ancient Sumerian writings, thousands of years before the Jewish ones, the first man is Adamu. Some, more brave, believe that genetic changes continue even today in sapient species. Thus, within blood groups, the Rh negative group should be the future of the human race. At first, it was present only in the European population, in the Carpathian Danube area, 20%, and the Basque population, 80%. Thanks to globalization, it is spreading throughout the world, being today represented in 15% of the world's population. But if an Rh negative woman has sex with an Rh positive partner, and the fetus is Rh positive, it will be rejected by her body through abortion. Nature is also strange, someone will say. But before we return to the 7 Anunnaki, I would like to remind you of another legend. In one of the old stories of the Genesis of the world, the Vedic one, found by me in the secret doctrine of Blavatsky, says, when the supreme God pleased the earth, he gave birth by his breath to 7 gods of the Genesis of the world. The leader of this group was Dakshka. He, after looking all over the earth, found the most beautiful place which he will populate during the night, with his first 10,000 sons, his beloved sons, his chosen sons, the chosen of the world, the deities. During the day, he, along with the other gods, created the animals, birds, etc. But he, Dashka, will realize that he forgot to multiply his sons. So he will create the woman. He, Dashka, is considered the great god of Genesis of the world, but also the god of sex. His sons, the Dacians, will live for a while in the land of the gods, Dacia. but some of them will leave it to populate the world. At Shinka Vecchie, we rediscover a pre-Christian temple that has the sign of the 7 gods of Genesis, the 2 overlapping triangles that have the yin and yang sign in the middle. And to their left, the figure of a particularly strange man. You may see my book, We Are Not the Descendants of Rome, page 130. Let's go back to the Anunnaki. In the earliest writings about them, we find them in the Gudea region, 2144 to 2124 AD. During the Third World Dynasty, we find the 7 magnificent ones: An, Enlil, Enki, Nihursag, Nana, Utu, and Inanna. In the ancient Sumerian texts, the Anunnaki are deities of immense power. In the poems dedicated to Enki, world order, we find hymns in which the fate of the world is decided, honoring and praising Enki. In the same text, it is repeated many times that they, the Anunnaki, were, are, and will be the ones who decided the fate of humanity they created. The strangest of strangeness for me was to discover the Anunnaki thousands of kilometers away from Sumer in the state of Ecuador on the Pacific coast. We were discovering that these civilizations are connected. But how? Together with my daughter Ioana, I visited these Anunnaki in the temple of Assurban Ipal II in the Metropolitan Museum in New York. And I will let you admire them with their watches, GPS, and the bag computer that each of them has. Of course, the ancient Anunnaki gods, sometimes they fight with each other. And I will describe some more moments that I thought were significant. The destruction of Sodoma and Gomorrah, in what can only be described as a rain of fire from heaven, is well known and can be linked to the ancient wars. The Sumerian records regarding the causes of the nuclear war of the ancient Anunnaki can be found in numerous ancient Sumerian texts discovered so far, such as Era Epos and the Lost Book of Enki. At the heart of the dispute was the ongoing war between Enki and Enlil, which is ultimately the cause of the Sumerian Anunnaki nuclear war. Their battle for control of Earth, which began in the early years of the Anunnaki settlement, beginning with their dispute over whether the prototype Adam they had created, using Enki's expertise in genetics, should be able to reproduce or not. Enki defied Enlil's direct, preventing the genetics team from conducting any genetic experiment that would make the prototype Adam capable of biologically reproducing independently outside the control of the Anunnaki research laboratories. The Sinai Peninsula was one of the main battlegrounds of the Pyramid Wars, which arose from the fact that an Anunnaki space was vital for launching into space orbit and maintaining links with the home planet of the Anunaki group, the planet Nibiru. Even today, we can visit the space facility from Baalbek, which is in Lebanon today, constructed thousands of years ago. All this ordeal, all this perpetual lie, all this holographic matrix in which we live began 450,000 years ago with the arrival on Earth of the Anunnaki aliens. Not only did they hybridize the Neanderthals, and that's how the human race appeared, not only did they block 8 of the 12 DNA spirals that we were gifted with by the forces that govern the universe, but they put us in a fog of ignorance, helplessness, dependence on a system created with the aim of manipulating us and to place us in a huge human farm. Are we living in a huge holograph or not? The first thing the Anunnaki did when they arrived on Earth was to create a huge hologram, a blue beam, which surrounds the planet Earth. There are hundreds of astronomers who discuss the fact that more than 150 billion stars that surround us near space, the human being can see with the naked eye a maximum of 6,000 stars. They told us that we reached the moon 50 years ago, after which they also told us that this would be impossible. First of all, that we would not have the necessary technology to make such a journey through outer space, and secondly, that we cannot pass the radiation belt, Van Allen. Ha! So alien races, they can come and go through the radiation belt as many times as they want without suffering anything? And not only the extraterrestrials, but also the trivial microorganisms that are brought to Earth by asteroids and comets can pass unharmed through this belt of Van Allen. For us, the people, the Van Allen belt is the electrified fence that surrounds the farm. When they were discovered, the Otosdal balls, Klerkstrop spheres, they said that these spheres are a result of nature, but these spheres are made of an alloy of nickel pyrophyllite. Nature cannot produce this alloy. And do you know how old these spheres are? 2,800 million years. And they teach us that now, 2,800 million years ago, there was no life on Earth? In Toprakale, Turkey, a stone sculpture representing a spaceship was discovered. Its age is 3,000 years old. The ancestors still had a good imagination. They were probably smoking opium or marijuana, while sculpting spaceships. In the Kimberleys, Australia, a face of an astronaut was discovered in a cave, which seemed to be, to me, strikingly similar to the saints that appear painted in churches, monasteries, cathedrals, etc. In Nepal, it was also discovered Lalaldov's plate, artifact on which images of aliens and spaceships are painted. Age, 4,000 years old. Others who smoked? Luzac-le-Château, France. In 1937, a series of graffiti were discovered, in which dinosaurs appeared alongside men, women, and children wearing clothes similar to those of today, skirts, trousers, shoes, and even caps. Age, 40,000 years old. Glosel tablets, France. Similar to those Sumerian ones, only they are 15,000 years old, 3 times older than those in Sumeria. Acambaro, Mexico. 32,000 pieces were discovered in which figurines with people hunting and even riding dinosaurs appeared. And they tell us that the dinosaurs disappeared 65 million years ago? The Illuminati said it was a fraud, a fake. I don't know who would commit a fraud, painting 32,000 objects? Ever wonder why the first censored and then made the 2012 movie, Anunnaki Disappeared Everywhere? It is said that about 450,000 years ago, a first delegation of these confused god beings landed on the planet Earth. the mission was led by the god Enki, a name that appears often in ancient Sumerian mythology. But they were not gods. They were Anunnaki of the planet Nibiru. Their delegation consisted of the god An, the creator of heaven, and other gods, Enki, Enlil, and Nihursag, Inanna, Utu, and Nana. The history of religions is complicated and complex and fascinating, and whoever ventures to try to understand it discovers at the end that he has not actually understood anything.